Hi. I really can't believe it. It's day 100. We've been doing this for 100 days. It's not that I didn't think we were gonna make it to day 100. I mean, that was the initial plan. When I started this, I sort of needed a more measurable, I guess, a more objective first goal, first milestone, if you will, to get us going with something that was not super ambiguous, but just sort of, yeah, just a little more tangible. And my decision was to commit to making 100 videos in 100 consecutive days, chronicling my attempts at weight loss. And I don't want to say attempts as in I didn't know if I was going to succeed. I just needed something to get us going. And it's probably one of the best decisions that I made was to make a very substantial but very specific commitment to what it is that I was going to do. And if you guys have been with me for a while, I mean, some of you have, but you know, the ones of you who've been with me from the beginning know that it's had a lot of ups and downs, and we've been doing really great with some things, not so much with others. But at the end of the day, there wasn't a good or a bad answer. There wasn't a success or failure. It was just what was happening in the moment. It's what we were. That was basically what we wanted to show, what we wanted to do. I didn't think it was going to be a straight line, of course. And I knew there were going to be ups and downs. And so I needed to make sure that I was committing to something that would be okay to do. See, it's hard to put into words, because if I was coming in with a sort of preconceived notion of what this needed to be successful, at the first sign of it not succeeding in the way that I had thought or anticipated or hoped, then we would have abandoned the project. And so it was very important for me to set some parameters that didn't rely on any measure of success or failure to continue. The only success or the only goal in and of itself was to do it, was to do this for 100 days no matter what. And yeah, it was difficult. It has been difficult. Because there have been many times where I have felt like quitting. I have felt like this was not what I wanted to show. This is not what I intended to do. I'm ashamed of my actions, you know, like all that stuff, all those emotions that we go through as humans. And so I can tell you with absolute certainty that the success came from setting this up. Yeah, I guess that's the right word. Setting up the measure for success to be what it is, which was to make 100 videos, to do this for 100 days. And they had to be consecutive days, and they had to be 100, because that was measurable. It's something that, it doesn't matter if I had a good day, it didn't matter if I had a shitty day. I just had to do it for 100 days, period. And some of the days you guys have seen where perhaps my food choices weren't great, and in the moment, I even refused to film, you know, like, it was always like this internal battle, especially in those days where I wasn't proud of my actions. And you guys know this, if you're watching this and you have gone through any kind of similar journey for health or weight loss or anything like that, you know that sometimes you do these actions and you feel ashamed. You almost want to do them, you know, in the dark, hiding where no one sees you. And it was too much in the moment for me to do it, to show you. I consider like putting on the camera and like showing you guys what I was doing. I was too ashamed to do that. It was very difficult, but you know, after the fact, I came to my senses and I was still able to show, or at least come clean about these things. And it was difficult. It has been difficult to own those parts, those more unsavory parts of my self, and to do it, you know, in front of the camera. That, you know, this in and of itself can be a little awkward when it's a one-sided conversation for the most part, which is why it's always been so important for me to read your comments and all the stuff that you guys share with me, because at least in that sense, it becomes more of a two-way conversation, which is what would be ideal. But this medium tends to be a little bit one-sided. And so I understand it. It is what it is. I mean, still feel very lucky that we have the opportunity to have this medium to do this and to communicate and to have that. But there is a certain level of one-sidedness that can be a little uncomfortable. And it does give me a little license, a little wiggle room to get away with things. I don't particularly love that, but I have been able to sort of bring myself back to my senses and share with you guys everything. And so I declare these first 100 days, my first 100 days, I feel like a president, my first 100 days in office. Not president, but like a politician. My first 100 days. But yeah, I declare them a success, because through all the difficult times and the good times and all the successes and the failures and the, you know, spilled shakes all over the kitchen and Mickey D's runs and discovering how to make meals a little bit healthier, we have done it. We've been consistent. We started our workout regimen and we have been consistent with that, and we have been doing it together. So there are plenty of things that we have accomplished and that we have succeeded at in these 100 days. And so I am very, very glad to be here. I am very grateful for all of you guys. But then that brings me to, where do we go from here? And this is, if you guys have been watching these videos for the past 2 weeks, I guess, you know that I have been, on the one hand, the daily updates have been a little bit short, I guess, if you will, for the most part. And I have spent a great deal of time in introspection, trying to figure out where we go from here. Because on the one hand, I feel that my commitment has definitely gone down, my commitment to myself. Interestingly enough, not my commitment to you guys and my commitment to this process. It has not diminished in any way. But my commitment to myself in the way of making every choice count, I guess. And I feel like I have sort of lost my North Star, my why, the reason why I'm doing this. And that is making everyday choices a little more difficult. And we've talked about this plenty, where we get to that junction, to that point where either we can make a good decision or a bad decision, and these things are, you know, all the time. And without that extra oomph, that extra motivation, that extra reason to make the right choice, we end up making the wrong choice more often than not. And I'm referring specifically to food choices. And in that way, there are some right choices and there are some wrong choices. Sometimes the wrong choice is the right choice for mental health reasons, but I'm not going to get into that because then it's going to get extremely complex. if we want to become healthier, which is the goal here, there are some choices we have to make in terms of the food that we're choosing to eat. And without a more specific reason to make those right choices, it has become a little more difficult for me. And I've had conversations with people about this, most recently with Yolima about this, where for someone like her, or for plenty of people, just being healthy is reason enough, And there's also someone who I believe was blessed, by genetics a little bit, and has never had the level of food addiction that some of us have. And so I don't know if she quite gets it. I don't know that people who haven't gone through this quite get it, because, there are so many people who have never been here because just wanting to be healthy alone is enough of a reason. Clearly is not for us. And so, which is what we're here. And we need to find something else. And so lately, I haven't had it. I haven't had that reason. I feel like I've lost that North Star. And it was different when we started this, so it's been 100 days. But when we first started, and we were back in the US, I'd sort of been gearing up for it for months. And so I was prepared, and there was the novelty factor. And so it was easier to commit because, we're starting out, and it was exciting. And I had sort of created the system, and I created this little bubble. We talked about this before. I created this little bubble where I still couldn't control myself, but I was controlling the environment to almost an extreme where, I wasn't really leaving the house much. And so I could control almost every aspect of my daily life by being inside this bubble, and that was easier to do. And then the moment I stepped out of that and we came down to Argentina, that's when things started going a little haywire, because suddenly there was a complete, I underestimated how much I was relying on that bubble, on that system that I created there. That was not as easy to replicate here, because all of a sudden there were different factors at play. The dynamic was very different. It's a new country. The types of foods that I could get here were different. It's a different kitchen. Maybe I didn't have all my gadgets. All the little things that I'd come to rely on weren't available here. And that just threw me off completely. It was just messy. And so I had a difficult 2 weeks when we first got here, if you guys remember. So little by little, we started finding ways to getting back on track. In the past, this is the kind of situation that would have led me to completely abandon my health and weight loss goals. It was always temporarily, but that could be anywhere from weeks to months, to, I don't know, maybe even my entire stay here. And so, luckily we were able to avoid that because I had you guys. And it was enough external pressure to do this that, it was enough external pressure to do this that we didn't completely abandon it. And so that in and of itself is a win. But it wasn't, how do I put this? This is where I get a little hung up. It wasn't a completely willing effort, if that is the word. It wasn't completely willful. The motivation didn't feel intrinsic. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for you guys. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for you guys. I was only doing it because I knew that I was responsible to you guys. Some of you guys called me out in the comments, which I deeply appreciated. And I thought, I have to do it for them. which worked, you know, and that can be a strategy that works. But it doesn't feel as good as when the motivation is intrinsic, as when you know deep in here, deep in your heart, that you're going to do it no matter what, that you're doing this for you, and that, you know, come hell or high water, you're going to follow through. And I haven't been there for a long time now. And it doesn't feel good to, it's not that I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, and we're here, we're all in this together, and in a lot of ways, you know, I have to thank you guys for having stayed mostly the course, even when my own intrinsic motivation was wavering. But I believe it's time to get back to that. And that's sort of, you know, we're here to hold each other up when that is becoming a little bit more difficult. But at the end of the day, the main goal is to get back to that intrinsic motivation, because that's the real driver. That's the real fire within you that is going to get you, or in this case me, is what's going to get us to the next phase. And I believe that, you know, there's always going to be cycles where we have more of that intrinsic motivation and then we lose a little bit. And if we have a good system, a good support system, it can help us get back on track and, you know, just sort of keep the cycle going. And so you guys know that I am a big nerd when it comes to numbers and things of that nature. How do I say it? Yeah, I'm just I like data. I like being able to quantify things, and I like symmetry and numbers in general. And so day 100 approaching felt like, okay, this is just an opportunity. Not only is it a nice round number, it's symmetric, it's significant, but it was the end of the original commitment, you know, as far as the quantifiable logistics of this. And so it felt like the right moment to take a step back, think about this again. We have sort of, we've already overcome the initial hurdle, the initial friction of getting over that initial phase of, you know, I'd never done this daily for so long. You know, and there was always going to be friction with that, and trying to figure out like how to do this consistently, how to do it every day, how to fit it into my life. And so, you know, like it was necessary to be able to do that, but now we've overcome that friction. We've gone through a lot of different things. And so now is the time to figure out like what's next, right? What is the next thing that we're going to be doing in order to keep going? Because we have a very long way to go in order to get to our goal, to be fully healthy. And so this felt like the right opportunity to be able to do this, to take the time to think about it. And this is why, you know, it's been mostly these last 2 weeks where it's a period of introspection, but it's difficult for me to sit down and be thinking about this purposely. It's almost like I have to make a point, sort of like bring it up in my head and say to myself, okay, we're going to be thinking about this. But if I force myself too hard to think about it, it doesn't really happen. And so I have to like bring it up and almost put it like in the back burner and just kind of let it there, just let it simmer. And things started coming up here and there, and yeah, and that's basically what happened. Of course, then last week I made a point of taking one day and I sat down and I tried to write down some things, and yeah, that was basically what I was trying to do, was just figure out some specifics as to what it is that I'm going to be working on. As I started thinking more about this process and trying to analyze things that have worked for me in the past, other areas of my life where I might be successful, there's always a very common pattern that emerges, which is the ability to quantify and measure along the way. I believe has to do with part of my obsessive compulsive disorder, which if you guys deal with anything like that, you might know what I'm talking about. Like something for me is always some examples. Like if I have like a gas stove that I have in some apartments, you know, and like you turn it on, it's like, how do you know that the gas isn't leaking? And, you know, so like I always check a certain number of times repeatedly to make sure that, you know, like the gas is not coming out. And so when you do that repeatedly enough, then you come up, like, how do you know when to stop? And so you come up with these rituals that a certain number of times is enough to make sure that that's, or like locking the front door of the house. You know, like, well, how do you know that you really locked it? And so you start checking and checking and checking. And the way that I've always been able to sort of keep it somewhat contained is to come up with a number that is significant enough to make sure that your brain, it finally clicks. So for me, it's the number 6. It's like, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's locked, we can go. And it's like these little rituals and things that make it so that you feel, yeah, you feel like you've done the thing. And so the more I thought about this, the more I realized that being able to quantify things, to measure them in a way, I don't know, it makes it easier for my brain to jump on board, to get on it, and to go along with it, to cooperate, if you will. And so I started thinking more and more this week about how can we make this, yet again, into something that we can, you know, that again speaks to my heart, speaks to my brain, that is not just in theory something that would work, but something that I could work with, if you will. And so I started coming up with ideas and playing around with things, also keeping in mind some of the lessons that we have learned. I tried to be not overly optimistic with my efforts and my energy and my ability to carry out some of these things, and so I try to keep it as contained as possible. And thinking about the symmetry of 100 days, and you know, all of these things that play with dates that feel significant, that have a certain level of symmetry, that are quantifiable, something that can be ambitious yet achievable. You know, all of those things, kind of throwing everything into a blender and see what would come up, or what would come out. Something revealed itself to me. And sorry, also, I'm developing a cold or the flu or something. And of course, you know, day 100 and I'm sick. I've had a sore throat for the last day. I'm starting to get congested, and oh well, you know, curveballs that life throws at you. But anyway, so what I started thinking about in terms of the symmetry that that just speaks so much to my brain and to my heart. I love symmetry. I love dates. I love, you know, all that stuff that can make it significant or make something feel more significant somehow. I seem to attach a lot of emotionality to that, to those things. Something came up. And of course, you know, like I'm thinking now, like what's the most dramatic way to put it out there? But on July 21st, 2025, so a little over a year from now, I will be turning 40. And I remember like turning 20 and turning 30 were so significant for me. You know, like, again, you know, that sort of symmetry and, you know, attaching so much emotion to dates and all of that stuff. Those were big milestones for me. They felt like really big milestones. I remember 30 was a little, 20 was so negative for me, you know, not to go off topic too much, but I remember feeling so old and feeling so depressed that, you know, my life was over at 20. 30 was a little bit better, you know, and I'm hoping 40 is going to be even better because I'm, you know, growing and gaining more perspective. But anyway, so on July 21st, 2025, I will be turning 40. And, you know, significant for many reasons. I remember, you know, when my parents were turning 40 and feeling like, oh man, they're old. And oh my, how things have changed. Also how times have changed. Because, you know, I remember my parents at 40 were, you know, parents. They had a house and kids, and I don't know, I don't feel that way. But anyway, it's, you know, turning 40 is significant also from a biological perspective. A lot of things that I've read, you know, like there are some physiological changes that we go through in our 40s, especially like your metabolism slows down and, you know, like all of these health things start diminishing, and you have to start getting like more medical testing, you know, and all of those things. And so it feels, obviously it feels significant. Then something else happens that I start looking at, well, how much time there is between now and that date. And it turns out that it's about 61 weeks starting, I mean, this coming week, this coming Monday, technically it would be like 61 weeks of, you know, time. And then I start doing more numbers, you know, it's like this numerology. Not that I do numerology, but, you know, I do like, oh, it's this long. I'm one of those, another little parenthesis on the side. Whenever there are like dates and movies, and I say 3 years later, like I'm always like paying so much attention to like, well, how much time has passed? Hold on 1 second. The plot cannot move forward. Like people don't give a shit. And I'm like, wait a second. Well, how much time has passed between, it's been these many days, and what's the impact of that time? So always that. And looking at that between now, so day 100 of having started this, and my 40th birthday, it's about 61 weeks. And then my weight's a little bit lower now, but let's see, because there are too many components. Okay, so that's one component. It's 61 weeks. Also, when you look at weight loss in general, and you're reading about weight loss and, you know, calorie restriction and all of this stuff, people talk about healthy weight loss is between 1 and 2 pounds per week, right? And so if you do, you know, like it's about 3,500 calories to a pound. And so like if you restrict 500 calories a day, 7 days, that's 3,500 calories. That's about a pound a week, right? And so like that's something you could be doing. Then if you go like 1,000 calories restricting yourself per day, so you're consuming 1,000 calories less than you're spending in energy, that's 7,000, that's 2 pounds. And that's basically like any time that you read anything from anyone about what healthy weight loss is usually somewhere between 1 and 2 pounds, right? That's what they say, healthy weight loss. And so I started looking at it, and in 61 weeks, my weight's a little bit lower now, but if this week we started with the average weight for this week, being this coming week, being 310 pounds, which is around where I am, a little bit lower, but about around where I am. By the time week 61 comes around on my 40th birthday, if I lose 1.8 pounds per week for 61 weeks, it'll get me down to 200 pounds. And that is too much symmetry. I know that I'm forcing things a little bit to make them fit, but it is damn close. It is very close. And somehow, like, that level of symmetry just jumped at me. All right. I mean, it just, you know, 200 would be extremely significant for me, you know, and I know that I have more to lose, you know, after 200, but 200 would be so significant. I haven't been under 200 in well over a decade, you know, I don't know, maybe closer to 2 decades at this point. I remember there were so many things, but one of them is I have been skydiving twice, and basically, like, one of the weight limits when you do a tandem skydive is 200 pounds. And if you're over 200 pounds, like, you can be a little bit over 200 pounds, but then there are specific requirements, and you need a specific type of, like, harness and stuff like that. And basically, like, I remember at some point, you know, a long, long time ago, when I first started thinking about losing weight in a more significant way and all of that stuff, I thought, okay, I'm gonna get under 200 pounds and I'm gonna go skydiving, you know? And so this idea of, if we start this week at around the weight that I am, by the time my 40th birthday comes around, I could be 200 pounds. And yes, it's the upper end of, like, what healthy weight loss is, but it's ambitious but doable. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it pushes me forward. It just seemed perfect. The symmetry of it is just delicious. And so I have decided that this next phase of this that we're doing is going to be called 200 by 40. As in, we are going to be 200 pounds by my 40th birthday, and we're gonna go skydiving again. So, I still don't know when we're going to do it exactly. I mean, if it'll be exactly on my birthday or not, or where we're gonna do it, but we're going to get to be 200 pounds by my 40th birthday, and that way we'll be able to go skydiving again. And it feels like the right direction to go. And you know, the more I've been thinking about this, and that I've been talking to people about this, and giving them, you know, just kind of throwing ideas around, and just, you know, using them as what's the word? I feel like there's something I want to say, and a sounding wall. Thank you. Using them as a sounding wall to get some of these ideas. I keep coming up with this, or I kept coming up with this analogy, this comparison, this thing where I was thinking about the space race and how, you know, like at the beginning of the space race, you know, in the late 50s and early 60s, you know, the Americans were always trying to catch up to the Soviets. You know, and the Soviets seemed to be like a little bit further ahead. And so in the short term, if you had this sort of like shorter goals, the Soviets were always beating the Americans, you know, because they were in a short distance, being 1 or 2 steps ahead was significant enough advantage that that was going to happen. So then that's when the Americans decide, we're going to go to the moon. It's a target that it's far enough that the short term doesn't matter as much, and we still have a chance to beat the Soviets and get into the moon. And so I've been thinking about that concept and applying it to this, as in, you know, if we set an ambitious goal that is achievable, but far enough in the future, it'll make some of the smaller decisions easier to make. And another way of thinking about this that I was talking to Jolima about is sometimes I have been in flights that are short, you know, and I consider a short flight anything from like 2 to 3 hours, right? Just very short flights. And some of those short flights, because you have that expectation of like it's only 2 to 3 hours, by 2 hours, let's say if the flight is 3 hours, 2 hours in, sometimes I'm so uncomfortable, I just can't wait to get off the plane and be done with it. But then I have also been on some fucking long flights, and you know, like I did a flight from, I believe it was Los Angeles to Melbourne in Australia once, and that flight is like 17 hours. I also did a flight from San Francisco to Singapore, and again, another like 17 hours. And those are long flights. And when you have that expectation of the, you know, flight that is that long, 2 hours is nothing, because your mindset is already, you know, thinking about like, this is nothing. So 2 hours feels like nothing. 4 hours feels like nothing. But when your expectation is a shorter flight, you know, 3 hours, 2 hours in, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I'm like crawling out of my skin because I want to get off the flight. And so this is, again, something else where I need to set my expectations correctly. And I need a goal that is far away enough that the day-to-day is not as painful, because my expectation is so much further ahead, so much longer in that way. And so I just need that. I need a quantifiable goal that is significant, it is measurable, it is, you know, it speaks to my mind, it speaks to my heart, it brings together all these metrics and symmetry that my brain really likes. It feels significant, you know, all of those things. All of those things are being put together into this new project that is going to be called 200 by 40. I am going to be 200 pounds by my 40th birthday, 200 by 40. This is what we're doing. This is the goal, you guys. And so I have given this a lot of thought since it, you know, all the pieces sort of came together, and I have been thinking about ways to make this, you know, like we have our goal, right? We have our metrics. We know what the goal is, but also I've been thinking about ways to enjoy the process a little bit more. And so making sure that the videos are more enjoyable to make. And if they're more enjoyable to make for me, they're going to be more enjoyable for you guys to watch. Of course, I want you all there with me. I want us all to do it together. So I've been thinking about ways where we can collaborate more, create more of a sense of community, make this a little bit more two ways as opposed to just a one-way thing, something that we can all really be a part of. And so I'm giving this a lot of thought, or I've been giving it a lot of thought. I don't have a fully laid out plan. I think that's something that we can even, you know, work on it together a little bit. But I have ideas. I have some ideas that, you know, in my head, I would want to have everything ready to go. Kind of like I did at the beginning when we started this in the US 100 days ago. Like every single part of it was mostly sorted out. Not so much this time, because I keep learning, or I have learned quite a bit during these 100 days that I usually bite off more than I can chew. And so I'm trying to be a little more measured in my approach this time. But I have ideas. I have some ideas on how I would like to move forward, the things that I would like to do. So for the next few days, and probably starting tomorrow, I want to start exploring some of these ideas and telling you guys about some of the ideas that I've come up with, and maybe we can have, and it would be great if you guys could, blah, 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 blah. So for the next few days, I want to start exploring some of these ideas and maybe coming up with something a little more concrete. I have some ideas that are more formed than others, and I want this to be a process, you know, where we can start adding things little by little and making sure that I don't get too overwhelmed with too many things all at once. But I want this to move forward a little bit. And so maybe starting tomorrow, we can start talking about some of those ideas, what we're going to do, some of the new things that I'd like to introduce to this process, how we're going to be measuring our progress, what things we're going to be paying attention to. Because again, I want this to be more enjoyable. Things felt for the last few weeks just felt stale for me. And I don't know if they did for you guys as well, but there wasn't a lot of passion in there. And I felt, just the best word to describe it is stale. The content, the videos, making the videos felt a little stale. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing really. I wasn't as excited anymore, and so this is going to be a good way of thinking about that and figuring out ways to make it better, to make it more enjoyable, to make it so that this can be more fun for all of us. Because if we're having fun, we're feeling good about it, we're more likely to stick with it. And so we're gonna try to figure out the best ways to make this more enjoyable. And so I am very excited to start thinking about this, to start putting some of these things into motion, and for you guys to be part of this new phase that we're entering. We are coming out of the first 100 days and we are entering phase 2, which is called 200 by 40. So thank you guys so much for being here. It really means the world to me to have such a supportive community, and things are just going to get better from here. I'm really excited. So thank you guys. And now I am going to commemorate my 100 days by doing something really exciting that I've never done before. And I want you all to come with me. So a few days ago, Jolima bought some coloring for her hair. She used to have half her hair was blue, and it was kind of fading, and she wanted to do a little bit more. And so she went ahead and bought some blue for her hair. And then I saw in the same shop that they had this. It's like a semi-permanent hair color cream. And this one is supposed to be fuchsia. And I have a lot of white in my beard. And I thought, you know what? To celebrate my 100 days, I am going to put some fuchsia on my hair. And it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but oh well, here we go. She said I'm just supposed to go ahead and just do this. Ooh. Weird. Oh, this is looking I mean, this could either turn out great or be really weird. So the thing is that my hair, since it's so white in some parts, that it's going to, I don't want my hair to fall, but I don't want my hair thingy to get paint on it either. But since my hair is so white in some parts, that it is going to get it, it is going to, I don't have to bleach it first because it's already bleached. It's already white. So we are doing, and this looks more red than anything, but it's supposed to be like fuchsia, like a hot pink. I don't know. It looked like a good color to have. So I'm supposed to do this, leave it. How the hell did this happen? Oh, when I did this. Yeah. Anyway, I'm supposed to leave it on for like half an hour. And then that's it. It's a lot color here. I don't want this to get my skin, and I don't know if it's going to. But, well, happy 100, you guys. Happy 100. This is going to be epic either way. Oh, Lord. What are we doing? Any number of things could happen, you guys. Dorima said to use it all, so we are going to use it all. It's a lot of paint. Like, I feel like my beard can't take anymore. It's pretty soaked. Huh. All right. This is going to be it. I need to let it sit for like 20-30 minutes, and then we're done.